Without warning, the ground begins to heat, steel softens, concrete cracks, a massive bridge melts from the inside out, sending cars and people straight into the river below. Across the city, the sky turns violent, lightning strikes without storms, buildings collapse as the earth loses control of its own energy, then the oceans respond. Waves rise higher than skyscrapers, and entire coastlines are erased in seconds. This isn't climate change, this isn't a war, the planet itself is breaking, because the core has stopped. The man's arm was suddenly scorched by sunlight hotter than 1,200 degrees. Frozen in shock, he looked up and saw a massive hole torn open in the sky. A blinding beam of sunlight punched through the opening and struck the ocean below. Fish that had been swimming seconds earlier were instantly boiled alive. Panicking, the man slammed his car window shut and tried to drive off the bridge. But the tires had already melted. Worse still, a superheated shockwave raced toward the bridge at 340 meters per second. Steel cables sparked violently. In the next instant, the concrete roadway liquefied like wax. Within seconds, the entire city was consumed by fire, and the flames kept spreading. Days earlier, London had experienced terrifying anomalies. Birds flew straight into buildings and dropped dead. Soon after, hundreds of people collapsed without warning. Geologist Shaw was called in to investigate. He noticed a chilling pattern. Every victim had a cardiac pacemaker. Combining animal behavior with satellite data, Shaw reached a horrifying conclusion: the Earth's orbit had shifted. The change disrupted the planet's magnetic field, causing pacemakers to fail and animals to panic. When Shaw reported his findings, his superior dismissed them as impossible. But after reviewing the data overnight, he realized the truth and immediately alerted the president. An emergency meeting was called. To explain the danger, Shaw used a peach. The flesh represented Earth's mantle, still spinning. The pit was the core, which had stopped. If the core remained frozen, Earth would spiral into the sun, wiping out all life. Silence filled the room. Shaw proposed a desperate solution: drill into the Earth's core and detonate nuclear bombs to restart its rotation. But time was short. Conventional drilling was too slow, and the core's temperature exceeded 8,000 degrees, far beyond what any metal could endure. That's when the team leader revealed a secret. His friend Black had invented a revolutionary material that could withstand extreme heat and convert it into energy. Using it, he had built a laser capable of melting solid rock. The only problem was funding. Without hesitation, the Secretary of Defense transferred $30 billion and gave Black 10 days. With unlimited resources, the machine was finished in just 5. That night, a 6-person crew was deployed. Their vessel plunged toward the Mariana Trench, heading for a destination 3,000 kilometers below the Earth's core. At 5 kilometers deep, a violent undersea earthquake struck. Massive rocks slammed into the vessel. Above ground, operators held their breath. The hull barely held. Near the ocean floor, failure was no longer an option. After the countdown, the laser fired, blasting through the seabed. The vessel entered the mantle. Hours later, disaster struck again. A forest of indestructible crystals blocked their path. Even the laser couldn't break through. Trapped, the crew exited the vessel to clear the crystals by hand. Suddenly, molten lava poured down. They escaped, but one crew member was lost. There was no time to grieve. 4 hours later, they reached the core. But the heat had destroyed the bomb's launch system. The detonation had to be triggered manually. The core burned at over 8,000 degrees. Their suits could only handle 6,000. That meant one person had to stay behind. Without hesitation, Black stepped forward. To save the planet, he walked out of the vessel into temperatures nearing 10,000 degrees. Black endured unimaginable pain. The tool in his hands began to melt almost instantly, dripping away under the extreme heat. But in the final second before his body gave out, he forced himself to activate the switch. Inside the vessel, his teammates watched in silence, their hearts breaking. There was no time to grieve. With trembling hands, they pressed the detonation button. A thunderous explosion followed. A 5-megaton nuclear bomb detonated deep within the Earth. The core finally began to rotate again. The shockwave propelled the vessel backward, allowing it to retrace its path and escape. Moments later, a waiting aircraft carrier successfully recovered the crew. The world was saved. Shaw returned as a hero and also won the heart of the woman he loved. But peace didn't last long. An elderly couple suddenly looked up at the sky in horror. A meteor larger than the sun, burning like a giant fireball, was hurtling toward Earth at Mach 20. Everyone froze in disbelief. Days earlier, an astronomer had detected the comet. At first, he dismissed it as harmless. But after running simulations, he realized it was on a direct collision course with Earth. Terrified, he immediately reported it to the president. President Morgan held a global press conference. He announced that massive underground shelters would be built, along with a specially designed spacecraft. Astronauts would carry nuclear weapons into space to destroy the comet. But there was a cruel reality: the shelters could only hold about 1 million people. That meant only elite scientists and exceptionally gifted children would be selected. Humanity's future would depend on them. Panic spread across the world. Thanks to his father's status as a scientist, Shaw's family secured shelter access. But his girlfriend Xiaomei's family was rejected. Desperate, Shaw pulled out a ring and proposed on the spot, allowing her to enter as his wife. Xiaomei was allowed through, but her parents were stopped. Unable to abandon them, she chose to stay behind. At the shelter entrance, seeing her father's urging gaze, Shaw couldn't leave her. He jumped on a motorcycle and raced through the gridlocked city. At last, he found Xiaomei. Her parents, moved by his courage, handed over their baby and begged them to escape. Meanwhile, astronauts calculated the bomb placement and landed on the comet. As they drilled, disaster struck. They had underestimated the comet's density, and the drill jammed. Risking their lives, the crew managed to fix it, but as they placed the nuclear device, solar radiation heated the comet violently. Superheated gas erupted. Though they fought to return to the ship, several astronauts were lost. The explosion shattered the comet into 2 pieces. Communication was briefly lost. When it returned, they realized the smaller fragment had accelerated toward Earth, slamming into the eastern coast. Half the country was devastated. The larger fragment was still coming. The mission commander made a final decision. The previous blast had cracked the comet. If they could fly and detonate the last bomb, Earth could still be saved. But there wasn't enough fuel to return. After a long silence, every astronaut agreed. They said goodbye to their families one last time. With tears and courage, they piloted the ship. Just before the comet entered Earth's atmosphere, it disintegrated into countless glowing fragments, raining down like stardust. The astronauts gave their lives, but saved their planet. As massive tsunami waves surged inland, Shaw, his girlfriend, and her brother climbed desperately toward higher ground. When they reached the summit, they witnessed a sight they would never forget: countless meteors streaking across the sky like falling stars. Survivors everywhere wept with relief, and those who sacrificed everything were remembered by all of humanity. The movie ends here. Thanks for your watching. Leave your comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out.